Greetings, YouTube. This, Creatures of the Night, 67 Horrors to Haunt Your Dreams, by Scott Paul Maykrantz, is the only role-playing book I have ever read that has scared me in real life. High praise indeed. I have read a lot of horror things. I have read a lot of monster books. This is the only one that got into my head and made me react to something in the real world. Now, at one time, I didn't have internet access. Believe it or not, there was a time when I did not have internet access. And I would read before work for a few minutes. And I would frequently read role-playing game books, because I was an avid fan, even back in the day. And I was reading this one day, early in the morning. And it being New England, when I was leaving for work in the Northern Hemisphere and in the fall and the winter, it was dark. And I would leave for work and walk down to the main street in my town to get the bus. And this would entail walking down very dark streets, though they were safe, particularly for a fairly large male in a full-length wool coat. I cut a somewhat impressive image in some people's minds. I made some people very nervous. I looked a lot like a bouncer, essentially, even though I didn't have a beard back then. The odd thing is, for those that don't know this, I only grew this 3 months before I started on YouTube. And I had read in this book about a monster called the Murder Crows, which is an inspired name for crows, seeing as a group of crows is known as a murder. And the Murder Crows essentially hunt you and capture you by drawing your attention. And if they get your attention, you are doomed. Or your average person is doomed. Of course, your average GURPS heroes, can fight them off kind of thing. So while walking to work that morning, after having just read this book, or part of it, I heard crows. Now, I heard crows every single morning of every single day I had ever walked to work. Alright? Nothing out of the ordinary. But I'm walking past the church, and the building acts as a wonderful amplifier. A big stone wall, essentially, right next to me. And I heard a crow. And my natural inclination was to look into the direction of a sound. It's all of our natural inclinations. And as I began to turn, I stopped. And the reason I stopped was because for that moment, I wasn't concerned about the crow in the tree. I was concerned about the murder crow. I shook it off, realized it was silly, and looked at the crow and continued on with my day. But the impact on me was profound. I went home and I wrote a letter, an actual letter with my hand on paper, and sent it to the author via Steve Jackson. It was the only time I've ever written a fan letter to a game writer. Ever. I've never done it before or since. And he was very thankful. Not only was he pleasant and he sent me back a missive, but he included an article that had been written about him along with some other material, that as a way of saying thank you. Because he'd never had someone write a letter to him thanking him for the fact that at that moment, for that one brief span of time, for that 3 seconds of my life, he scared a human being out in the real world. It was a rare moment that I couldn't have ever shared with anyone else. I couldn't have had it if I had been with someone else. I wouldn't have been afraid. But he succeeded at something that most game writers could only dream of, that most GMs could only dream of. He scared someone in the real world.